City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded October 14, 2024.
It's 6:51. We'll call a meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Roll, please.
Christensen.
Here.
Morrow.
Here.
Shuda.
Here.
Keemer. Here. Broderick. Here.
We definitely have a quorum. Our first item on the agenda will be the introduction of Marcy Peterson, our incoming Finance Office Manager, Deputy Comptroller Treasurer.
Yes, so we have a new face at the table, so I just wanted to formally introduce Marcy. You know, whenever we post for a position, there's always kind of this hold your breath moment where you're like, okay, are we going to get anyone? Are we going to get anyone good? You know, and we certainly got lucky with Marcy. She comes to us with a lot of local government finance experience. She was the village treasurer for the village of Amherst. She was also the deputy treasurer for Portage County, the deputy treasurer for Wapaka County, and holds a bachelor's degree in public policy and administration, which is basically the study of government and how it works. So we're definitely happy to have Marcy on board. She started on September 30th and is also cross-training with the outgoing finance office manager, deputy comptroller treasurer Carrie Freeberg, and so far that's been going very well. So she's soaking up those decades of knowledge that Carrie has. So before she leaves. So.
All right, welcome aboard. Fantastic addition. All right, that gets us to our next item, discussion and possible action on considering adding a line item to the proposed 2025 capital budget for a citywide facilities plan. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Keemer. Discussion, I know Alder Shuda, you were one of those that had brought this forward. Would you like to share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, after being here for 2.5 years, sometimes it gets overwhelming with the requests and so forth that the departments have, and I guess I would like to see a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year master plan so we can move forward logistically correctly for the citizens of Stevens Point. And I know that, you know, I'm sure, you know, Mayor Weiss has probably got something in his head, and the other department heads have what they would like. But for an alderperson to have it presented as such a plan with an independent source backing it up with finances that we may or may not ever be able to do would be beneficial.
Okay. Any of the other committee members?
I guess I agree. There are so many facility needs citywide throughout each of the departments, and you know those have come up over time. And I think in terms of just prioritizing, you know, which needs to come first and how are those sequenced and all that, it is a really complicated puzzle. And so I think, yeah, having some guidance or input would be helpful.
Okay.
I know we had a plan a few years back for a citywide garage that was like $40 million higher, and that was kind of like blew everything out of whack for everything. But I know like the first step is to have a plan. Yep. So I'm in total agreement.
I guess I think some of it, and I've had conversations with Alder Shuda as well, and part of it is taking a step back and taking a look at the big picture and trying to see all the various needs in all the different departments. They all have needs, and they're legitimate needs, but we need to take that holistic look and try to prioritize and make sure that we are proceeding in the most logical, beneficial manner for the city as a whole. I think each director, rightfully so, I think part of what makes them effective is the fact that they're very passionate about what they do, and they're very good at what they do, and they feel strongly about their department and their needs, and should. But I think having someone from the outside, an objective view, takes a look at all the different things. I think the council getting that kind of direction and being able to take a look at that big picture, I think will help us move forward. So I'd be in favor as well. Any other comments from the committee? I guess my question is, do you need a specific dollar amount or not to exceed, or what, Corey, what would your suggestion?
It would help if we had so I know what to add to the budget, and we haven't gotten formal quotes or anything, so I'm not sure exactly what, we think it would be, but I guess, what's the committee comfortable with spending, on this? Consultants are expensive, so it's not going to be free.
But hopefully it'll prevent us from making some costly mistakes down the line.
And that's what I would ask for is some direction. I can tell you that every department needs space of some sort. The police department needs a garage. The fire department could use a new facility. The parks department is in a building that was an armory in World War I. The streets department could use additional space, an additional garage. So what I would look for is, what do you hope to get? If you're just looking for what do we need, our department heads can tell you that, and they'll do it for their what they're working for right now.
Well,
but if you're looking for something like we should prioritize building A over building B, or if you were looking at maybe establishing a timeline, like let's say we need hypothetically $100 million in facilities, you should do this one first and this one first. This one has the highest need. That's going to be more expensive.
Right.
Well, I would trust the directors and you. Maybe, I don't know if we form a committee or whatever with the directors, the committee, maybe a couple alder people that are presented with all of the needs that they feel with some sort of ballpark money. And then if we get somebody from the outside then that prioritizes those needs.
Okay.
That way it's independent and nobody can be.
Right. And I think, too, each of the departments can do a lot of that initial groundwork.
Save us a lot of money.
Gather that information.
They already know what they need.
Yeah, and they know what they are, and so they'll be able to share that with the consultant, keep that feed reasonable.
So just for clarification, you're looking at more of a cost for the facilities and the prioritization of them? Or, because if you want the directors to tell you what they need, they can do that. That's easy peasy, well, not easy peasy, but easy enough, right? They know what they need already. Putting a dollar amount to that is something we could probably do ballparky in-house.
That's exactly
right.
Right.
It's $300 a square foot for this type of facility. We can do that in-house. Won't cost you any more than you're already paying.
Right.
If you want something in addition to that, that's what we need to know. What do you expect that payment to do?
Yep.
The consultant does what? Takes the data from the directors and says, well, you should really build a, God, I'm going to get in trouble no matter what building I say. You should really build
Building A.
building
X.
Building
X.
A first. You should build building C within the next 10 years, and it's going to be X million dollars.
Yep.
If that's what you're looking for, then I think you can do that at a pretty reasonable cost, $40,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
I was thinking
If you're
50.
looking for something a little more extensive, price goes up on all that.
I am certainly not looking for extensive, but we need to get something.
Put a placeholder of maybe 50 grand in there.
50 grand,
We
I
need
think.
to get something going.
You still have to approve the contract, whatever it is.
Right.
But
When
if
we get there.
if you're willing to let the staff put together their needs, ballpark a price, we can present that to the body here for the next couple of months. And then if you still choose to hire that consultant, we'll have a $50,000 placeholder to do whatever work it is you want to do.
Fair enough.
Any other comments from the committee? Comments from the audience?
I have a comment.
We had one more, sorry, Laura.
I would just say that I would be hesitant to support this. I think we're in a position where, well, I can certainly sympathize with this feeling of not really knowing what all is out there that we need and how much it's going to cost and when it might be feasible. It feels like so many of these projects, we already know that they are prohibitively expensive, and paying a contractor, up to $50,000 to rank how prohibitively expensive they are seems like maybe not not the best path forward. I think if as much of this information as we can try to get from the department heads, I think maybe we should at least try to pursue
Right.
that first.
Absolutely, have them do as much of the groundwork as possible and keep our costs as minimal. I think that's just our placeholder, not to exceed. But I do think it may help us make wise decisions and possibly prevent us from making even mistakes that would cost us more than $50,000 down the line when you're looking at multi-million-dollar projects. So, all right, from the audience.
Jackie Guthrie, Alder District 2. I found myself feeling curious about what the difference is between our capital budget spreadsheet that has columns for the next several years and what the proposal is requesting. So I didn't know if it was a risk analysis for not doing certain projects or if it was a validation of the projects that are spec'd, or if it is a request to spec out further into the future so that we have that perspective to inform our current capital votes. Those are some of the curiosities that, some of which I would support and some of which I think we can do in-house, but those were the questions that came to mind about what we were seeking in this request. I don't know if Dean Schutter, you could speak to that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think every department has wants and needs, and sometimes it might cloud at some points, and I'm just wanting somebody from the outside to really come in and say, okay, we really need to go in this direction, because they should all fight for all the departments. They really should. And then we get a fair analysis from an outside source is what I'm looking for, so that I have the direction for the city of Stevens Point, the people.
So what it sounds like that could be is like a 10-year out proposal from department. So additional columns in the capital spreadsheet and then an external consultant's analysis of that.
Yes, I think we can do, like I think you said, 90% of it in-house. And it's basically, so they don't have to do all the work. All we're doing is presenting them what our departments think, and then they can kind of piece the puzzle together for us.
An overall prioritization, because that's the hardest for us to do. We don't have quite that degree of expertise.
And then once we get that prioritization, we might be able to make a 3-year, 5-year
Because
in-house.
right now what tends to happen is everything gets pushed to 2026, and you have and you still have $17 million worth of requests all in the same, and you know that you're not going to be able to do it. So then instead of all of them being shifted down, we can somewhat get an order of what's next in line, and we're not going to have all 4 of them sitting in a budget 2 years from now.
So some risk analysis of current facilities, but also which direction our community is growing in, what we project to be critical needs versus wants, things like that.
Right.
Okay.
And
that helps me.
it's not just, I mean, some of it will be what type of shape the building's in, but it'll also take into consideration how vital is that building, how much is it used, how
Frankly, what are the
impactful is it?
alternatives, right?
Yep. So, any other comments from the audience? Mr. Mayor.
So, yeah, you'll actually see that in item number 5 about, or in item number 4, about where things are in the slots and pre-approving things. But I wanted to remind everybody, especially the alders, but not necessarily just the alders, that you contact the department heads. They will give you a facility tour. You can see what they do, where the shortcomings or shortfalls might be. I would strongly recommend that we take advantage of that. That'll give you a real good physical idea of what happens in the buildings, where the space needs are, and you can do that for every single department.
Yep. Good idea. Anyone else from the audience? All right. We have a motion and a second. I think we're ready to act on it. All of those in favor of adding that line item to the proposed 2025 capital budget up to $50,000 would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no.
No.
Okay.
Lars? Okay.
Alder Broderick. That gets us then to item number 5, preliminary approval of our 2024 general obligation, no, first item 4, approval of our 2025 capital budget. Comptroller Treasurer.
Yes, so the capital budget is before you. There's 3 changes since this was presented. The first 2 were related to items that were already approved by Finance, and I want to apologize for this. There was a little bit of a misunderstanding in terms of if something was already approved, if you're still putting this in with your capital requests or not. And we still need to have, for clarity, we still need to have those in with the 2025 capital budget, even though they've already been approved, and that is $776,000 for 2 garbage trucks, which was already approved earlier this year, and then also a fire truck that was previously approved and ordered. I know my memo says $963,000. I actually got an updated number from the fire chief of $952,000 for that.
So it went down?
Well, I think it was just, the first number that he gave me was kind of from memory, and then he verified with the manufacturer what the actual cost was, and it came in a little bit,
Don't think I've ever seen that before.
I know.
Yeah, well, we'll take it. And if we tried to order another fire truck, right now, I think the exact same fire truck would be about $1.5 million if we were trying to order that right now. So we've got those 2 items, and then the third one, obviously, you just approved with the $50,000 for the facility study. So that brings the total to $9,289,250 for the 2025 proposed capital budget. And which basically, we are going to be borrowing more than what we're repaying in principal again this year. It'll be pretty similar to last year. We're looking at borrowing about $8.5 million for capital. So,
Okay.
and then the rest from fund balance.
Do I have a motion to approve capital budget as presented?
Motion to approve capital budget as amended.
Motion by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Comments from the committee? Pretty straightforward, and it's pretty much in line with what we've been hearing previously, so no big surprises, except for the fire truck going down. All right. Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving that budget as presented would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes. Item number 5, preliminary approval of the 2024 general obligation borrowing. Comptroller.
Yes, it's that time of the year where we need to borrow to reimburse ourselves for the capital projects that we've had throughout the year. So we'd be looking at a borrowing of almost $16 million. It'd be $8.5 million for the general city capital projects for 2024. We'd be looking at borrowing almost $4.4 million for the TIF 9 Badger Road extension, and then a little bit under $3.1 million for the Forest Creek subdivision. So for a total of $15,960,000 plus issuance costs. Issuance costs would be on top of that. And then for council, we'll have what's called a parameters resolution, where basically that's the formal resolution approving the borrowing, and then that sets the parameters with which we can issue the debt.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there a motion to approve preliminary approval for our 2024 general obligation borrowing?
I'll move approval.
Alder Keemer moves. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Alder Morrow. Comments from the committee? Comments from the audience? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of preliminary approval of the 2024 general obligation borrowing would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed is no. And that passes unanimously. Item number 6, approval of change orders from AECOM related to the Business 51 Design Services. Director.
Good evening. I apologize, I was unable to get a memo together for this last week. It kind of got sideways on me, but I think what's otherwise there is pretty self-explanatory. We're approaching a 60% design, which should be coming out here within the next month or so. At that time is typically when we would finalize the real estate needs. So one of the biggest issues we have for both of the projects we have going on is the real estate acquisition. Very difficult to otherwise forecast ahead of time and put a cost to it with the initial contract we had. So waiting to this time till we finalize that. So those are being refined now, and we can put a price to the acquisition for that to make sure that we're doing that process correctly, especially related to any grant funding we have. The other two items related to the north side, there's some additions that we otherwise have had there that have been identified to it. AECOM has come back with their local office, looked at the corridors to see what's otherwise changed. So between 60% and the final design is to pick up a few things that have changed, and there have been a number of things, especially on the north side, that have changed since the initial survey was done. So it's just to pick up that to make sure that we're coming up with the best final design we otherwise can that represents the existing conditions. And the last thing, which I think anyone can agree upon, is looking at, specifically in this case, some HISP funding. We've identified some potential opportunities throughout the corridor as we move forward related to some potential improvements that could be, and HISP is actually generally a 90-10 split. It's been described to me as jumping through hoops, in fact, when they're on fire, but otherwise is a really good opportunity. It's a very underutilized program, generally speaking, why the money is otherwise so good, but it has a potential for 90% federal funding with 10% match. So we're looking for different ways to do that, but there's a few things that AECOM needs to do for us to make sure that we qualify for those and can utilize those as we move forward. So that's the last bit of what's included in the change orders.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Questions or comments? Questions or comments from the audience? Mr. Mayor.
Just so everybody's clear on this is for the Business 51 project. As it says in one of the memos here, we're talking about 43 total parcels to be acquired for the project, many of which are small and almost inconsequential. 6 of which are larger, and most of that is including the roundabout that's been aggressively approved at 4th and Division. But I want to make sure that people understand we're talking about the Business 51 project going ahead as the council approved, with the north segment being the first piece starting next year. So I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're doing here.
Yeah, and also say that I believe most that's being paid by TIF funding, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there a motion to approve as presented the change orders?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Alder Morrow, second by Alder Broderick. Comments from the committee? Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving those change orders for AECOM would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And those pass unanimously as well. Thank you, Director. Back to agenda.
Next.
Then we are at item number 7, a resolution authorizing the City of Stevens Point to apply for WEDC Corporation Small Business Development Grant for fiscal year 2025. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. As some of you may remember, the state of Wisconsin did award some finances for the Bounce Back program several years ago. It was a blanket grant application for businesses across the state to receive $10,000 of gap financing to make it through the pandemic and some of the financial difficulties. After that program had sunset and closed, the state reevaluated the purpose of those funds, if there was still support for small startup businesses in our communities, and so they announced the WEDC Small Business Development Grant. And that grant program is really intended to support businesses of 25 full-time employees or fewer, and staff evaluated if the grant application would be reasonable for us to pursue to support the economy here in Stevens Point. And given some of the city's economic development policies, we find that there are some consistencies and some opportunity to match that grant application to some of the demands of the city to support retail business growth in the city of Stevens Point. So staff began conversations with the Small Business Development Center at UW-Stevens Point, Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund, to see what tools we have afforded to us and which organizations could contribute to some extent the operations of a retail incubation program, where we are providing more direct technical assistance for specifically retail businesses, training them how to launch their brick and mortar retail storefronts, and to train them to use digital retail platforms more efficiently. So we've had a commitment from the Small Business Development Center at UW-Stevens Point to design that programming for the Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund, to utilize their new startup fund program and mobilize some additional revolving loan fund dollars in our community, as well as some support from the Downtown Business Improvement District and their vacancy program. The technical assistance would be a 7 or 8 week long program, 7 or 8 week long program series, the general business plan advising to prepare that first loan application, and the grant dollars awarded from the Small Business Development Grant would essentially be their collateral funds to get their businesses off the ground. So every business that participates, up to a maximum of 15, would be eligible to apply for that $20,000 of grant financing, and up to 9 businesses would be awarded that $20,000. We are also excited to work with a property owner in downtown Stevens Point in order to offer a reduced rate rent for up to 6 retailers, where they would be paying 50% of the market rate rent at that location for the first year, 75% in the second year, in hopes that they grow and move into a brick and mortar location that is paying full market rate rent out in the community. We're really excited to see the program come to fruition. Applications are due by Friday, so we'll look forward to getting that done by the end of the week while we're over at state conference. But we'll have that submitted, and hopefully by March we'll have an award and a new program off the ground. We'd be happy to answer any questions about the program as discussed.
Any questions on the committee? I think it's got great potential. I'm excited. I know, working with the Business Improvement District Board, I know they've been looking at different types of opportunities like this, and I think I really like the concept that not only are they going to provide the financial assistance initially, but they're also going to be providing expertise and helping them be successful and giving them the technical skills that they need too. So I think that collaboration between those various entities is going to be very beneficial. Love the idea. Any comments from the audience?
Mary Nebone, District 7 Alder. Does this require a city match, or is this, the funding is coming from WEDC, from the state?
Sure. So the program itself does not require any matching financing for the program. The $20,000 or the $180,000 that we'd be applying for would be 9 micro grants to those small business owners, so that $20,000 can be distributed. Matching finances do support the program, and so there's some opportunity for, say, the vacancy program from the Downtown Business Improvement District or from the city to help support the build out of the retail incubation center, which would be a minor cost in terms of the operations of the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is kind of a philosophical question. Not sure who to ask it to, but it seems a little strange that in order to write a grant that doesn't involve city money, why do they need to get approval from the council? Write a grant, surprise us that they got money. I can see if it requires a city match or significant city investment, that would be necessary, but like the city forester to write a grant for some trees, you know, can't they just write the grants? And I don't need an answer now, but think about it anyway. It seems like kind of a waste of time to get permission if it doesn't involve.
But it's still using city name, and so it's a control. I mean,
more importantly, city resources, like Resource Claysmith.
Yes.
You're only a resource.
Sam Lang, District 9 Alder. I wanted to say thanks. This is something that I'm so happy to see come out of your department. This is getting our tax dollars back out of Uncle Sam, back into our community, back into our downtown, and that's one of the things that I just love about the work that our people that work for our city are doing for us. And so, thank you.
Agreed. Any other comments from the audience? Hearing none, we will go on with our vote. Those that would be in favor.
We need a motion.
Oh, we don't have a motion yet. Those are just presentation. We need a motion to approve. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of authorization to apply for the SB.
Thank you. Alder Keemer. Is there a second?
A second.
Second, Alder Morrow. All in favor of that motion would signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously. Gets us down to request number 8, a request from the City of Stevens Point to apply for an Environmental Protection Agency 2025 Brownfield Cleanup Grant Program.
Right now, that presentation
You look
is going to be
familiar.
coming in handy.
Yeah.
Sorry, you'll be hearing a little bit extra from me tonight. So, some of you may be familiar with the work that had been done downtown Stevens Point on the Shopko site. Just a bit of background history on the site. There are 2 parcels right now one owned by the City of Stevens Point and one owned by the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Stevens Point. There was a more complex ownership. The Community Development Authority had been given the directive and acquired a lot of that property to be a part of the mall development in the 1980s. But since then, early 2010s, City had been evaluating the environmental contamination, redeveloping the mall location. Parcel identified in the presentation for Shopko was acquired by the city in 2023 under the directive of former Director Karnowski. And the city had evaluated some development plans that had been proposed from the site, as some of you may recall, in January. Raising began of the Shopko building in July of 2024, but the Redevelopment Authority has retained ownership of the other parcel, the parking lot. So just wanted to make sure that that's clear, that we have split ownership of those 2 parcels. The parking lot does circumscribe all of most of the Shopko building besides the western boundary. So you will see that the parking lot does extend north of the building. We move to the next slide. You also may recall earlier this year, the Downtown Targeted Area Master Plan had been approved by all of the bodies. And included in that Downtown Targeted Area Master Plan was a conceptual site plan for the Shopko redevelopment. I won't go into the exact details of each of the buildings identified because this is a conceptual site plan, but you will see multiple residential buildings, a transit center, several mixed-use buildings, and a downtown or urban park as a part of the conceptual plan. Staff had been moving forward with designing and outlining what acreage would be available at some of the proposed lots, resulting in about 3 proposed lots and 1 outlot, different acreages, for us to start discussing the future fate of these parcels with potential developers. That way we could move forward with development plans quickly after the demolition of Shopko is complete. If you wouldn't mind moving forward. There have been several requests for information about the environmental contamination underneath Shopko in the parking lot. The city had been working with Stantec for several years on a community-wide assessment grant, so we can be evaluating the extent of environmental contamination at several of our brownfield locations. And the Shopko parcel and the Shopko parking lot parcel were 2 high-priority parcels for us to evaluate. The results did find environmental contamination in several areas and several different contaminants across the entire site, which I know many of you will not find to be surprising. But they also illustrated the depth of groundwater to range from 10.5 feet, the most shallow in the northwest corner of the parcel, to 15.5 feet. So as you move away towards the southeast, the depth of groundwater does get deeper. There are several tools for us to leverage in order for us to assist with the redevelopment of those parcels, and the 2 most popular ones available to us are the EPA's Brownfields program, so the Brownfield Cleanup Grant programs from the EPA, and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation's Brownfield program. Thank you, Alder Kneebone, for pointing out the matching requirements. It's important for us to know that the EPA's Brownfield Cleanup Grant Program, because of the bipartisan infrastructure law, does not have a matching requirement up to the $4 million maximum of that program. So there's no matching requirement from the city, no obligation. The WEDC's Brownfield program does have a 1-to-1 matching requirement in this particular site. Typically, it's a 3-to-1 matching program, but given that it's not within an opportunity zone and we're a disadvantaged community in the past, it's a 1-to-1 match if we were to exercise or pursue those funding sources. Or funding source, excuse me. I wanted to give some detail and background on the environmental analysis. Stantec will be providing a presentation at next week's council meeting that illustrates the extent of the contamination, the analysis of brownfield cleanup alternatives, as well as the draft application for you all to see. So there's a bit more meat on the bone for the presentation than what I'll be giving you tonight. But in the full site investigation illustrates in that yellow area former cleanup efforts for the redevelopment of the parking lot to the west of Shopcombe, parking lot 16. Several former sites that had been service stations, cleaning stations, and print shops, and then all of the site monitoring wells and soil borings for the environmental study. If you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. So the next few slides, I'll just briefly touch on a few of the contaminants and the locations of those. You'll find that we've had toxic metals identified in several of the soil borings, as well as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons as well at depths that are impacting groundwaters. So you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. You'll see contamination at the entire extent of what is proposed Lot 2 or the BC site on the targeted area master plan, that northern portion, as well as some contamination within the planned right-of-way extension from the Union to reconnect Strongs and the College Court extension. If you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. We also have groundwater contamination, which was seemingly stemming from the former Dunright Cleaners location and does impact majority of the site. So the depth to groundwater, again, as a reminder, is 10.5 to 15.5 feet. So for us to utilize any underground space, we do need to be very mindful about the depth to full depth of the development. In preliminary conversations with the architects from the development team, there's no concern that we could keep the underground parking for the proposed residential development above groundwater. It does also make known to us, city staff and the department heads, aware that as the northwest corner is the least likely to be impacted by the shallow groundwater, or excuse me, that is the area with the highest groundwater, that if we were going to implement any underground parking infrastructure, that is probably the last spot that we want to do it. So staff have been mulling around the concept of transferring the downtown transfer center from the original site in the proposed plan to proposed Lot 1 or Site A. That hasn't been formalized. It's just in initial conversations at this point. So we believe it would be a wonderful aim for us to utilize the Brownfield Cleanup Grant first and foremost to apply for up to $4 million for the cleanup for the right-of-way and proposed lots 1 and 2 for the purposes of the project that had been discussed in January, as well as the potential for the transit center, as well as the right-of-way work. We're in conversation with Stantec earlier this afternoon about the preliminary total, and lo and behold, our total is about $3.9 million that we'd be applying for. Originally, it was about $3.2 million, but we've been working hand in hand with our Department of Public Works to ensure that we're accurately describing our project costs with Stantec and the application team. A few things to be mindful of. The EPA grant does require one owner in title for all of the properties in the application. The Redevelopment Authority does not have the unique entity identifying number to follow the federal grants procedure. Not sure why that had been foregone in the past, but it's something that we will proceed with in the future. And the EPA grant, according to the Stantec team, has a high likelihood of success. They reported back out in 2024 that even with 22 points off of the grant application, there was about a 90% success rate. And there's a higher level of funding this year as well. So expecting a high level or high likelihood of success with the application narrative that's been drafted, which does include some of the project components that we've discussed. This is the largest application that they've put together, but it is also verbatim one of the most compelling grant applications they've seen or put together, they feel. And as a reminder, if the EPA grant is not awarded, there is still financing available. So just to make sure we're clear on what we're asking for permission is to apply for the EPA Brownfield Cleanup Grant for all of the area in the hashed mark on the map on your screen right now, which includes a portion of proposed lot number 1, proposed lot number 2, and then the right-of-way to reconnect Union and Strong's and College Court to Union and Strong's. And there's a further request following this one.
Okay. A motion would be in order at this point.
I so move.
So moved by Alder Schuda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Any questions or comments from the committee? Questions or comments from the audience?
This is more just food for thought. This thing really highlights how decisions made in the past will affect generations in the future, and how we develop as a community will have environmental impacts. And as we look at this, that's what we're dealing with here. We kind of are fortunate we got somebody who understands how to get this paid for. Way to go. Because like this would be $4 million for a cleanup, because generations before us decided to put a facility there that has, well, wrecked the soil. And I'd say we would be remiss to not look at that and say, hey, as we go forward and plan as a community, we should think about how things will impact generations in the future.
Okay. Anyone else from the audience? Hearing none, we'll go with a vote on item number 8, the request from the City of Stevens Point to apply for the EPA agency's fiscal year 2025 Brownfield Cleanup Grant Program. All in favor would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously. That brings us down to item number 9, a request from the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Stevens Point to transfer parcel 281408322022969 from the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Stevens Point to the City of Stevens Point.
All right, so the Redevelopment Authority met earlier this afternoon to discuss the transfer of the Shopko parking lot parcel, the parcel ID listed on the slide, and discuss the transfer of that parcel so we could proceed with the grant application. There was a pretty robust discussion from the Redevelopment Authority members regarding the need for the Redevelopment Authority to be not only privy to, but an active participant in the conversations of the redevelopment. And the Redevelopment Authority would love to help proceed with the redevelopment of Shopko. So after a pretty long conversation, the Redevelopment Authority members moved to transfer all of the land currently owned and described as parcel 281240832202969 for $1 and other valuable considerations, with the following conditions to be written as conditions of sale in the deed: that the land is transferred for the sole purpose of applying for the environmental cleanup grant only. In the event of the grant is awarded to the city will proceed with the cleanup as stipulated in the grant. The city will transfer the title of this property back to the Redevelopment Authority at the conclusion of the cleanup and the closeout of the grant. In the event the grant is not awarded, the city will transfer the land back to the Redevelopment Authority immediately. The city shall not transfer any portion of this property to any other entity other than the Redevelopment Authority. The city shall not develop any of the property for any purpose, including parkland, and shall not transfer any portion of the property to any other government entity for development other than transfer to the Redevelopment Authority. And the Redevelopment Authority will retain legal counsel to draft the transfer deed with the above conditions. So that's both this slide and the next slide. Knowing that there's a significant amount of financial burden to manage the environmental cleanup of both the Shopko parcel and the Shopko parking lot parcel, not even all of the contamination will be addressed with this one grant application. I want to make sure that that's known, that there will be further contamination that needs to be applied for in future rounds of funding. Staff's recommendation to proceed with the transfer agreement, and that we work together with the Redevelopment Authority to ensure that we have as much financial assistance for the grant as possible. In discussion with Stantec, there is not a concern with the transfer conditions as written at this point in time. It does allow for the city and the Redevelopment Authority to negotiate a development agreement together, which would be in the city's interest to ensure that we're proceeding forward. But I would open that up for your discussion, for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. In the memo in the packet, it mentions the transfer of the Edgewater Manor site to the Redevelopment Authority. Is that currently still part of this agreement, no longer?
No. So there was an original conversation with one member of the Redevelopment Authority discussing the ownership of the Edgewater Manor parcel, and that was an option up for discussion. But in the Redevelopment Authority meeting, the option to negotiate or a trade of the Edgewater Manor parcel wasn't exercised. It wasn't discussed.
Very good. Thanks.
Yeah.
The concerns that I have with this particular offer, one, yes, the contamination needs to be cleaned up. The Redevelopment Authority could apply for the grant on their own. However, we don't know what's going to happen there. And obviously the contamination doesn't stop at a property line. We had discussed with a couple of the members the possibility of, in exchange for consideration of College Avenue right away north, we could consider turning over the Edgewater site. The biggest issue I have is this would require us to turn over the parcel to the Redevelopment Authority, and several members of the Redevelopment Authority have expressed concerns regarding the workforce housing element. And as most of the council knows, the housing affordability aspect of our housing plans has been one of the bigger priorities. So this could put potentially one of the workforce or income-based housing projects that's already rolling with the LIHTC project. It could potentially put that in jeopardy, since a couple of the members have already expressed opposition to that. We have one member who's present here. I don't know if John's willing to speak in regards to that, but that was one of the bigger concerns. My concern is that if this property gets turned over completely to the Redevelopment Authority after cleanup, yeah, great, we've got a clean property, but is it going to sit vacant like the Lullaby site had done for 2 decades because of the opposition to an affordable housing project anywhere on that site?
My concern, because part of the parking lot does extend to the north of the Shopko building, would we be even able to proceed with the road right-of-way?
This agreement turns the parcel over to the Redevelopment Authority after cleanup.
Right.
Period.
So then that strip would prevent even a road from being in, which we had looked at, hoping to proceed with that in a fairly short order.
Returns to our property, not the whole parcel.
So just a reminder, the offer would be to return the property of the Redevelopment Authority back to
Which
does make things complicated with the sliver of parking lot that does extend beyond.
Right.
Behind
So
Shopko.
there is a sliver of parking lot to the north of Shopko, so
yeah, here it shows you that the Redevelopment Authority property is outlined in yellow, basically outside of the Shopko building. So the Shopko building and this little piece right here is the parcel that the city of Stevens Point owns.
Right.
Under the purview of the Common Council. This other piece, all the way around here,
There was like no red
is the
things.
redevelopment authorities, and that's what we would have to turn back. So
And Vice Chair Gardner, would you mind explaining the redevelopment
That's in
authority
jeopardy.
property that would be owned?
So
Would
the
that be
roadway's in
proposed
jeopardy
Lot
as well.
2 and proposed Lot
Could
3?
be. There hasn't been opposition spoken
Right.
to the road.
But there's been no approval either.
Parking and concerns, but that would take away your ability to do that.
I think you've outlined it correctly. The return, the redevelopment authority is simply asking to return the part of land that we currently own, not the Shopko lot, but just the property that the RDA currently owns.
Right.
So most of Lot 2, if you put that screen up there, would be still yours. In the end, we all want to clean up the property. That's the intent. And then what happens to it after it's cleaned up is something for discussion between the RDA and the city council.
But you would agree that the road couldn't even proceed once without redevelopment authority permission?
The redevelopment authority owns approximately 50 feet, correct, as it fronts on Center Point Drive, that's correct.
John, you want to touch on any discussions that may have occurred in regards to the housing project that's proposed?
I think there's a difference of opinion within the RDA as to whether affordable housing is appropriate on that site. I don't think there's any discussion about whether it's appropriate in the city. The question is it appropriate on that site? And I don't think I can speak for the other members at this point. So I just think that that was one of the issues of concern. Again, I think the point is clean up the site. We're all in agreement with that. And then we'll continue to talk about future use. Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a reasonable summary, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The one concern that I had, and where is the language here, about turning it back over to the redevelopment authority immediately upon the site being cleaned up and the grant being executed.
If the grant, if the grant is not approved, return it. If the grant is approved, then return it after it's cleaned.
Right. But I would really like the opportunity to discuss that control at some point between here and there.
Right. And my
Because I think-
understanding is that the grant the submittal is due in the middle of November. The awards we made in May. I think that provides some adequate time to have those conversations.
But I believe that it would. I just want to make sure that the redevelopment authority is willing to come to that table, because there hasn't been a lot of redevelopment from the redevelopment authority properties lately. And up until recently, they weren't even on the market. Well, they may have been on the market. We didn't have a realtor for them. That's a concern, John.
It's also been a concern of ours as well. I think the question is that's been a concern of ours. We share the same concern. Let's leave it at that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
If I may just add a clarifying point I intended to share during the previous agenda item, but regarding the award and the timeline for the grant deadline is November 14th. We do need to have parcels under single ownership by November 14th. Awards will be announced in May of 2025, and once awards are announced, the expenditure period starts in July 1, 2025, and we have 4 years to expend the funds from the grant.
One more question, and maybe this is for John. You're getting your own legal counsel to draft the transfer deed. Do you have any concerns with making that happen, because you'll have to have the approval from the body to try and meet that timeline for our deadline?
I have no concerns. If the city attorney would be available to do it, I would be happy to do that. I think the concern has been in the past that it's been the rule that a city attorney cannot represent two separate bodies, and so that's why we included that, so we could expedite that as fast as we could.
Okay. Good.
Alder Kneebone.
Mary Kneebone, District 7 Alder. When we were talking about the Forest Creek subdivision, we heard a lot about those people, and we don't want any low-income housing, and those zero lot lines are nothing more than glorified trailer parks. Well, I'm here to tell you that most of the people that look for that kind of housing are working poor. They're like me, some of them on a limited income, but for a lot of luck in my life, I'd be living on $1,500 a month right now, and I don't know where in the city I could rent an apartment for that much and still, pay for health care and buy groceries and meds. So it's a perfect place for affordable housing. If people can afford their housing, they have money to spend in other places. They're not putting everything they own into the roof over their head. They now have disposable income, money to save, money to spend. We need more affordable housing in the city, I think, not less. And there's those stereotypes of those kinds of people that just want a handout. Most of these folks are like me. They're victims of their circumstances. They don't have a lot of options, and they're just looking for a hand up, not a handout. So, and full disclosure, I am a member of the Redevelopment Authority, but I had the wrong time in my calendar for the meeting, and I was not there this afternoon, and I will own my first unexcused absence in 10 years from a city meeting. So I do apologize again to the committee for not being there and being part of that discussion, but I would have supported Chris's plan probably. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Anyone else from the audience? Comments, questions from the committee?
It kind of sounds like we need to make a decision now, if it has to be by the 15th.
Yeah, and time is of the essence.
Yeah. As a recommendation from my office, I would recommend that we approve the agreement and allow us time to discuss potential alternatives before the development starts.
Okay.
All right. We have a motion and a second before. We do have a motion, right? No, we don't.
No.
We need a motion to.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion from Alder Moreau. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Alder Schuda. Any other comments? I'm going to request a roll call on this one. Please call the roll.
Christensen.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
I did. I abstain.
Wait. Point of order.
You shouldn't abstain. Yes.
You need grounds for abstaining, and if you do abstain, we should hear those grounds. Just because you don't want to. We want it on public record, because an abstention is significant. I think the city attorney is still here, so.
Nope, I concur.
Give you the rules if you need them.
Nope, I concur.
Okay.
I'm very hesitant. I do understand the time factor, and I will begrudgingly vote aye, because I feel like we're being strong-armed. So that's my vote. I vote aye.
Morrow.
I believe that the city and the mayor and the attorney and on the RA will be able to work whatever they need to work out.
So you're aye.
Aye.
He said that first.
I said aye first.
Shuda?
I asked her.
Aye.
Keemer?
Aye.
Broderick?
Aye.
Okay. Then that passes unanimously. And I think that's the last, no, we have
Nope.
claims.
Approval of
No,
claims paid.
you still have
Fire
the
department.
2026
Fire
fire
department training
department
center,
training
yep.
that we postponed from last month.
Yep.
Why is it still showing up there?
Good question.
Hang on.
Chief?
Cancel that. There we go.
Almost blew you off.
Chief Moody?
What's going on here? Hang on. There we go. Come on.
Item number 10, approval of the 2026 capital project funding for the Fire Department Training Center. Chief Moody.
As many of you or all of you know, last month I came in front of the Finance Committee with this request for 2026 for capital funding. We chose to postpone and move it a month in advance or a month down the road, giving me the opportunity, even though I knew some of the answers, I didn't have all the answers, looking at the external comparables. When it came to a request in regards to a training center being built at our training site located at 3100 Whiting Avenue. After careful consideration and having looked at other departments that the city has recognized in different cities our size, what they had for comparables. Before reading through the findings, we are clearly behind and have not had the opportunity for growth here in Stevens Point. Most of the departments have either added training towers, classrooms, and or props for their new stations or partnered with local technical colleges within their city to be able to provide these facilities to be able to train with right in their city and still be able to respond. The first one we looked at was Wausau, and Wausau's newest fire station went into service in 2020. With the training capabilities added to that station, training tower, confined space, rope rappelling, ladders. Also, they worked in a partnership with NTC to be able to use their facilities as well. So the next we looked at was Eau Claire. Their newest facility was built in 2018. That facility did not need any additional training requirements because Station 9 is currently built in conjunction with Chippewa Valley Technical College. The only thing splitting the Technical College and Station 9 is a wall. They have a state-of-the-art training center outside in the backyard, as they'll call it, and throughout the year, they'll move houses around in order for those people to train at that location right in Eau Claire. La Crosse. The mayor went with me last summer to visit La Crosse, and they were in the midst of building multiple new stations. Their current and most new, the newest station was just opened this year with additional training capabilities at that facility. Being able to have training towers, mezzanines outfitted to be able to do search and rescue above, also being able to throw ladders during certain climate abilities where they couldn't go out and do training outside, and a state-of-the-art classroom. Now, one of the cities that I'm going to bring up is not really a comparable to us, but I thought it was important to at least discuss, and that was Merrill. Merrill is significantly smaller than Stevens Point. Their newest station was built in 2014, but they have also partnered with their local technical college and have a state-of-the-art facility there. If anybody's not had the opportunity or the ability to see that facility, it is state-of-the-art. They have cities there, they have burn towers, they have equipment, they have apparatuses, along with many other things that I'm sure I'm missing. Superior's last station was built in 2019 with some of those, again, training opportunities built right into that station. Also, that being fire headquarters, they just built a newer four-bay state-of-the-art storage facility for training purposes and their additional equipment. They're also in the preliminary design to replace 2 other fire stations. So they currently have 3 fire stations in a city of the same size we do, and their newest one is a 2019, and they're looking at building 2 new ones to replace their older ones while we're currently speaking. Wisconsin Rapids, again, 2022 was their remodel on their fire headquarters. They've added, again, state-of-the-art facilities and also partnered with Mid-State Technical College to be able to train within their area. Nina Menasha. Now, they actually had a joint venture in the 90s where they actually were able to get Fox Valley Technical College's old fire science programs station and facilities. They were able to update some of those facilities, and then also with this last major windstorm, they had some damage to the facilities. They wrote a grant, and they actually received a $500,000 grant towards their $1 million project that they're on their way on as we speak. And lastly, West Bend. Finally, a city that actually has their newest station in the 90s, was established and built in 1998, 1999. They moved in December of 1999, just a month before 2000. During this situation, they also, this was a combination, from what I'm understanding, a combination fire and police station. It was a joint public safety center for a period of time up until the mid-90s. And then they actually, their new training center, the city PD walked away from their shooting range. They repurposed that range. They had a shoot house that they now do their search and rescue capabilities in, their RIT, Rapid Intervention Team training, and VEIS, Vent, Enter, Isolate, and Search training for the fire department. And currently, as we speak, they are in the process of building a brand new state-of-the-art fire headquarters on a 5-acre lot. So with all of that, I'd like to just say that the last time we had a look at a new training tower, classroom, props was 1967 over at fire headquarters. That building was built in 1967. It's currently where we do most of our training right now. We are moving towards the training center down at the training site. We have some new state-of-the-art equipment, facilities down there that we're continuing to progress and move forward on. Luckily, last year, we partnered with DPW, and we were able to find enough money to actually just safely redo the roof at Station 1 and put a cap on that training center so we didn't have continuing falling debris into the parking lot. So when our members would walk in, they didn't have to wear their actual fire helmet or a hard hat just to enter the building during their normal shift. So with all of that being said, as many people can tell, we are way behind the times when it comes to a new training center or what others people have to offer. Now, I also received an email just of recent asking a few questions, and again, those members who have had the opportunity to come by and sit down with me and see where the fire department's at, we do have a shovel-ready project. We do have the blueprints put together. The other question that was brought up was, what are we bringing to the city for this? Where's the cost on this? What's involved? And just this last year, Stevens Point, centrally located, state of Wisconsin. We hosted the Hazmat Conference, a 3-day conference where 75 to 100 people attended. We had the Firefighters Association Conference, a 4-day conference with 250 people in attendance. We had the IAAI Conference, that's a fire investigation course, or conference, a 4-day with almost 300 people in attendance. MABUS, Mutual Aid Box Alarm Systems, and WEM. We just had that conference this last month dealing with emergency management as well. About 150 people in attendance. DCI, Department of Criminal Investigation, is currently hosting a 10-day course right now out at our training facility. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the news releases on that. They have 35 people here for that event for an 80-hour course spanning over 2 weeks. When you look at what that is, and we looked at what an outside person is bringing into the city for an overnight stay, and we ran the math on all that, and knowing that about 20% of those individuals don't stay here in the local area, it ended up being about $620,000 that the city is taking in on fire department functions going on right here in the city of Stevens Point. Now, the next thing I want to take a little bit more clarification or a little bit more discussion on is they've asked for us to be able to have hot classes. What are hot classes, some of you may ask? That's during the conference, they bring their turnout gear, they bring their SCBAs, and they actually go down to our facilities and they practice on live fire. They practice residential structure fires. They practice on vehicle fires. They'll practice on roof ventilations. They'll practice on search and rescue and all sorts of different tactics, extrication. We know that geographically Stevens Point's in the right spot. But we have to be able to offer these hot classes to keep these different conferences coming back to this area, something that other cities don't have to offer. And how do we do that? We offer that by having a classroom in that facility as well, a state-of-the-art training center that houses that classroom. Just this past year, we were asked to be the first smoke diver program in the state of Wisconsin. The only thing that kept us from being that site, the premier location for the central Midwest, is because we didn't have a classroom at that facility. Now, graciously, Chief Cuso has supported the fire department in all its endeavors in allowing us to use the classrooms here. Midstate has done the same downtown. But in the fire world, they're looking for that classroom right on the actual fire grounds so they can see it and then they can go out and practice it, all in the same evolution. And that's really key to the fire service. Why is that key to the fire service? This is what I'll leave you with. Today, I spent the day with members from Local 484, our union. We had a leadership conference down in Madison. That's where I spent the day. One of the breakout sessions was regarding a firefighter from Milwaukee Fire Department this past April who suffered over 20% burns to his body in a residential structure fire. The Milwaukee Fire Department did something, I just got to say I commend them. They did something that I haven't seen other departments willing to do in the past. Fire departments are good at hiding their mistakes. We all are. They actually went ahead and they said, no hiding anything. We want to see the true facts. What went right? What went wrong? What can we learn? Because this member may or may not come back to the line of duty. Now, it's not a line of duty death. We're not going to go to another ceremony or another procession for this member, but we don't know if this person's going to come back to the line. Through this process, one of the things we do is we call a Mayday, and on our radios we push that Mayday alarm. That alarm was never pushed on that radio, but he called for a Mayday 5 times in that residential structure while he was trying to rescue people, and then realized he had to abandon trying to rescue the people and rescue himself. Also, why did that happen? Because of training. People don't want to listen to the radio channels. People don't want to go through the training because it's hard. People don't want to have to train how we're going to play. Don't want to create muscle memory. Well, that's what it's about, and that's what this training center is about. We also talked about that day, the members of Engine 7, they threw a ladder to the A side of the building, that's the address side of the building, to be able to get this individual out. And in the process, they saw another firefighter take off running. Well, there was a lot of issues during that day, and one of the things where there was a hydrant that was unable to open. And for some reason, utilities didn't claim it out of service. And so they ran the engine down to the next hydrant to pump back to that fire. But the firefighter knew we needed another 24-foot extension ladder because they trained how they were going to perform that day on the fire scene. And he knew 2 ladders were better than 1. So he ran by himself a block and a half for that ladder, a 24-foot extension ladder. Turned around and ran all the way back, and by the time the rescue 1 was throwing the first ladder, they were throwing the second ladder, and that's how they brought that individual out. These are the types of things that we are missing within the Stevens Point Fire Department. And I'm hoping the day will never come. But when it comes, we have to create muscle memory. And this is how we do it. So when the day comes, we have to perform these skills. We perform them correctly, and we save lives, and ultimately, we're proficient in what we do. So with that, I just want to thank everybody. And if there's any questions, I'll take them at this time.
Any questions from the committee? If not, a motion would be ordered so we can begin discussion.
Move to approve.
Move to approve, Alder Broderick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Alder Morrow. Committee, what are your wishes? What are your thoughts?
Under discussion, I'd like to just bring up one other thing. This is a discussion for $960,000 in capital funding in 2026. The reason this ask is coming forward is because this is only for a part of the building. We, the Stevens Point Fire Department, are going to put a committee together. If the city's willing to stand behind us, we're going to stand behind the city, and we're going to do the other part of the legwork. We're going to form a committee, and we're going to go out and fundraise the additional funding to be able to build this building in 2026. That's why we need the extra time. It's not for 25. We need to look at 2026, and we're going to put the other money up through fundraising. We have members already at the department that want to be a part of this committee, are really interested in it, and really want to jump on board and do this. So, again, I can't go out and ask other people to donate or support this if the city of Stevens Point is not behind it first.
Makes sense. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
What percentage of fundraising are you going to need in order to actually, this 960, get it going? And then you are hoping to raise how much and how soon a time?
So the $960,000 is the initial project that we have shovel ready is about a $3.1 million facility. The $960,000 is 30%, and I will tell you already, we've looked at the needs versus wants and the reality of actually getting this building, the members of the Stevens Point Fire Department. Since the initial ask and going back to the table, we've worked with Keller, and we're already going to cut things out of this facility to be able to bring that cost down for everyone involved. Some of those examples are, we aren't going to have a gear washing system down there because we have a basically a clean cab concept. We're going to bag all our turnip gear down there, and we're going to put it on a trailer, and we're going to bring it back to Station 1 and do all our washing there to save that room. We also have gotten a donation from Mid-State Technical College for a older enclosed trailer. We've already put 4 new tires on it, a new tongue on the jack. We just sealed the roof, and they're currently got it ripped apart at Station 2. The men and women of the Stevens Point Fire Department are rebuilding that into an air trailer. We're going to take the air cascade system room out of that facility. Another area that we're going to take out of that facility is the turnout gear locker room, and we're going to put the lockers against the part of the apparatus bay. And as we keep cutting these things out, the wants or the nice things of the facility, and really look at the needs of what the Stevens Point Fire Department in a regional training center are about, the state-of-the-art classroom, having the apparatus bay, the mezzanine to be able to do search and rescue. Eventually, we've had preliminary conversations with the PD of potentially using that as a a city shoot house or an area for them to be able to clear things in, because Chief Kuso was gracious enough to take me down and see other facilities that were close to that. We're able to cut some of that funding out, actually, as well, or those needs, as we move forward to make this very realistic.
So you're going from a 3.1 million building to what, a 2.5?
About a 2.4, 2.5.
So you're going to still have to raise 1.5
That's correct.
from the citizens of Stevens Point?
Not from the citizens of Steve. We're going to go to, we're trying to partner with other organizations. We have a current partnership with Midstate right now. We're obviously going to be in talks with them. We're going to look at other companies to potentially do donations. I have a few companies that have already preliminary discussed like 6-digit checks that they're willing to put towards this facility because they feel it's that important.
And if the city gives the $960,000, what type of time frame are you looking to have the building complete? Are you just holding off until you get the 1.5 before it's going to be complete?
We're going to have to hold
open-ended.
It's kind of open-ended. We're pushing for the spring of 26 or to get started in 26. Now, completion, I don't know when that's going to be, but we can't start a project that we can't fund. And I'm not willing to do that to the taxpayers to put that type of cash up front, that $960,000, and not have the rest to be able to fund the whole facility. So it's going to have to be, we're going to have all of the funding before we put that first shovel into the ground.
Any other questions?
So is it fair to say that this money would only be spent if the entire, if the full funding was reached for the building?
That is correct. That would be the only way that this $960,000 set aside for this facility would actually be used, is if it was fully 100% funded. Then once that's taken care of, we break ground and we move forward.
So we commit the 960, but we might not pay it until, who knows?
We're hoping 2026.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So at one time you talked about 30%. If it's down to 2.4, that's about 750,000.
And
Still looking for 960, or are you looking for 750?
Well, Corey's got it both ways on the sheet. And as the chief standing up here, I'm going to ask for the 960.
Of course.
Now, of course, that makes my life a lot easier and that committee's life a lot easier. But eventually, we'd have to have that conversation with Corey if it really looks like the 30% when it's finally done, or the 960.
Or I can wait until everyone has had a chance to.
I just want to point out that these estimates are in today dollars.
True.
Not $26. So it's very likely that, well, it's potential at least, that once the construction actually happens,
It'll be back to 9.
potential costs increase,
Yeah.
and you're going to be back up there anyway. But this is the seed money, if you will, right? The kind of what starts the traction.
Yep.
We have a commitment from the city, and then
Yep.
the fire department can go out and say, listen, we've got this percentage already covered with a commitment from the city. Here's what we're asking you. We've done the same thing with the Plover River Crossing, or, well, even Friends of Emerson Park had, that one big donation or
Yep.
one big thing to really get you the traction that you need for the rest of it.
Okay. I mean, I think this is a great idea. Really, this could also bring money in. To Director Kramer, what he did at the field, I think, is a good blueprint for that. Once the city's behind it and they know that, and they know what they've been able to do, they've been able to get money behind it, knowing that the city's behind it. And I know that has created a lot of, I mean, it's always busy. There's always things going on there. And what he was able to do with that, I think the same thing could end up being, I think the same thing would be done here.
That was private.
Yep.
The Gerke stuff.
Right, but he was able to bring a lot of stakeholders in, and he was able to get all that work done, but that was needed for years.
Any questions, comments from the audience?
Mary Kneebone, District 7 Alder. I'm also the Alder liaison to the Police and Fire Commission, so I've been following a lot of what's going on. On Saturday, Milwaukee firefighters saved 4 children, 2 adults, and a dog from a house fire. From what I've read in the news story, the fire started on the first floor and quickly engulfed the building. And the reason all those people were saved is because of training. So I think this is a great idea. I think this puts our firefighters and potentially our police officers too, if they work together on things, a chance to really improve their ability to respond to the needs of the citizens of Stevens Point. So I think this is a great project that's going to bring a lot of benefits to the city and particularly benefits to our firefighters. So I'm in support.
Any other comments?
Just one final question. Is this a project that would be required to go out to bid once the funding was fully reached? Yes. Okay.
And then once it's built and run, is it self-fulfilling as far as costs of maintaining and continuing operation of the building, or where's the funding for the continuation of?
Well, that might be a little bit more tricky when it comes to funding it as we go, because we'd have to look at how many conferences, how many classes, and what we're going to be able to hold out there, and what we're going to be able to charge for that. But there is a partnership in that right now. Currently, Midstate, when they went into their agreement with us for the current 10-year plan that they're in, they had a cost of maintaining facilities and other equipment on the training grounds. Only a percentage could be used for moving stuff forward. A percentage of that had to be used for upkeep and maintenance of the facilities and being able to show those records and what we're doing. So that is a part of that. We would be looking, again, that would have to be in discussions with those people. And the first step they wanted me to go down is making sure that we had the buy-in from the city of Stevens Point.
Alder Schutter, but I think that's a very good thought as we look at potential projects. And you also have to, capital expenses are a one-time cost, but each time you do one of those projects, you tend to have recurring costs that you're going to be on the hook for every year after that as well. So that is something to be mindful as we look forward as well. Good point. Any other questions, comments?
Final comment.
Final comment, Alder Broderick.
I just want to say thank you to the chief. I feel like you consistently bring a depth of detail and analysis to these conversations. Comparatively, how we rank in other cities, when these training centers have been built last, the potential revenue for establishing Stevens Point as a hub for training, the measures you've taken to reduce the cost. I think when we have these talks about all of the things we want to do and how to prioritize those are exactly the data points that we use to make these decisions.
Very helpful.
So I will be supporting this. Thank you very much for a consistently informative presentation.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we're ready for a vote. All in favor of approving the $960,000 to be put onto the 2026 capital budget for a fire training center would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed would be no. That's it. Gets us to claims paid. Comptroller, are there any items that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, so as usual, we have a lot of big checks for capital projects since it is the road construction season. And then also you'll notice there was $3 million for opening a new certificate of deposit. So on occasion, I like to move money around to find the best interest rates. So you'll see that on there as well.
That's not in your own personal...
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a motion to approve claims paid?
I'll move approval of claims paid.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Morrow. And Keemer with the original motion. All in favor would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed would be no. Our agenda is exhausted. We stand adjourned.